Hey everybody, welcome back to Dev Drawer. This is the fourth video in our series on PHP CRUD using MySQLi. In our previous videos, we went over how to use jQuery validation and Ajax in order to populate this table that you see here, as well as be able to, whenever you go to create or update, it shows you the error messages regarding the inputs. So we have form validation, we have everything pretty much set up with the CRUD system. So we're going to be going over how to create an authentication system so that you have a user that can actually log into the system so people aren't being able to edit your database without being able to log into it. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we want to do is, since we don't have this page already, we're going to create a new file and we're going to call it login.php. And in this page right here we're going to just open it up real quick, and it's currently blank, nothing there, which is exactly what we want to have on it. I'm going to come over here to our index.php, and I don't feel like rewriting all of this code, so I'm just going to copy it over. Inside of this, we don't really need our table anymore, and we also don't need any kind of icons or anything like that. We're just going to change our h1 tag to say login so we can recognize which page that we're on, and here we go. So whenever someone's not logged in, you obviously don't want them to see this header file. And one of the benefits of us creating our theme header is that we can simply come over here and just remove it. However, if you remember from our previous video where we created it, we created the card that goes around it inside of that header file. So if we open up that header file, we can see card body and card. So we're going to go ahead and copy that over and use it as it is right now. So let's come over here and clean this up a little bit so we can kind of see what we're doing. We don't need to have the closing divs for this because they're currently contained inside of our footer scripts. So it's fine. We can just leave it as it is right now. And you can see as we refresh it, the login is there by itself without the navigation. So on this page, we want to create a form that gathers a username and a password. So let's go ahead and create our form action. Like always, we'll just make it go back to itself with the method of post. And we're going to do this one class login because the other form that we have is class form, and there's validation attached to that. So we're going to add the jQuery validation for this form, and we're going to call it specifically from its own script. Alright, so first thing we want to do is create a label, and this is going to be for username, and then we're going to put the username as the label. Let me go ahead and close this so we can see a little bit better. And then we're going to do an input type equals text. The name is going to be username because that's what PHP expects. The ID is going to be username because that's what jQuery expects. And then we're going to use the bootstrap class equals form control. And that'll give it that bootstrap form look. So we're going to go ahead and just copy this over. And we're going to change these values here to password. So we got the for username for password. Update it here, and change it here. So we don't want people to see what other people are typing in, so we don't want to have this field as a text field, so we're going to quickly change it to a password field. And then finally, we're going to add a button to submit the form, and we're going to call it btn login. And we're going to give it a class of btn-primary, and we're just going to call it login. So let's see what we got so far. Alright, so that looks good. What we want to do also is create a register page, and we're just going to create a simple register link because you want to be able to have users register whenever they get to the website if they don't currently have have an account. So there will be a flag in the database whenever we go to create that table for the users that says whether or not they're active. So you can have someone register for your website, but you don't necessarily have to turn it on to allow them access to the website. So another thing that we were doing inside of the header is this message session. We want to go ahead and copy this over and just put it right above the card because it's going to be used in case a bad password is used, or something like that. We need to be able to display when they get logged out, and so forth and so on. So we're just going to kind of put it there so whenever they redirect back to this page with an error message, it will show. And since we're not using the header like every other file is, we're just going to have to put it in there manually. Alright, so let's go to the database real quick. So I'm going to log in using WAMP, so root, no password, and then I'm going to open up our dev drawer, and we have just the employees table. So we're going to create another table called users. We want to have an ID field, first name, last name, username, password, active, and level. So that's 7 fields that we need to add. So let's go ahead and create our 7 fields. And the first one is going to be our ID field. And we are going to have it auto increment, and it's going to be set as primary. And then the next one is going to be our username, and it's going to be a varchar at 255. Our F name, again varchar 255. L name, varchar 255. Password, all of these are going to be varchars except for the active and the level flags. So we want to have it where it's defaulting as defined to a 0 for both of these, so that whenever they get added to the database, they're automatically set at a 0 level and they are inactive. So let's go ahead and save this right now. And currently we don't have anything in there, which that is good. So let's create some functions inside of our functions.php. Includes functions.php. We want to create some functions that allows us to do a login statement. So let's get down to the very bottom of this, and we're going to write function. So function do login, and you can call this whatever you want to call it. And we need to pass the variables username, and let's go ahead and set it as a potential null, and password as a potential null as well. Let's go ahead and I think we can come over here to our select statement that we created earlier to select all employees, and we can probably duplicate that for the most part. So let's take that and paste it in here. Let me close that so I can see. Then I want to do select star from users, where username equals question mark and active equals 1. Okay, so you might be thinking, how come I'm not sending over the password? Well, what we're going to do initially is I'm going to send over a flat text password, which is very insecure. Never ever do that in real time. But just to kind of show you the ease of use of doing it, I'm going to go ahead and create a just a flat text password so I can show you how it's logging in. So let's go ahead and bind our parameters. So we're going to do our statement bind param, and then we're going to be binding the username. So we're going to pass that username to this statement, and then we're going to execute our statement. We're going to get our results. We can leave this in here. Let's change the message on it. So let's say something like your account has not been enabled. Please contact an administrator. Okay, so let's go ahead and alright, so if they are if the account isn't active, even if they have the username correct, if it's not active, it's going to display this message. If it is active, we want to come in here, and we're not going to create a data row like that. We're actually going to create a session value that gets stored inside of the browser session. So as long as they have the browser open, they have session access to this website. So let's go ahead and create a session variable. And just so we don't get it confused with any other sessions later, we're going to make sure that we flag this one as a user. And then let's pass the ID for now. Okay. So let me go ahead, and since we're going to be using the sessions, we need to come up to the top of our page and put in a session underscore start, opening close parentheses. That'll just include the function for the session to start whenever the functions.php is loaded, which is on pretty much every single page. Okay, so now we have our session here. We want to pass as many variables as we can. And again, like I told y'all before, this star is not the way to do this in production. You want to do specific, fname, lname, username, level, whatever it is. But for right now, we are going to just pass everything to it. So we're going to gather the ID, fname, lname, username, and the level. So let's go ahead and update this information. And lname, then lname here, username, and level. So we don't need to pass the active flag because we're already figuring out whether they're active or not based on this statement. They won't even be able to get here unless they have that statement. Okay, so let's go ahead, and if the session is valid and it creates the session, we're going to redirect them using the header location. We're going to redirect them to the current index.php. Alright, so let me just look through it real quick. Now, we should be able to technically log in with just a username right now for any accounts that would be active. So let's try it. There's not any accounts in there, so let's just do ASDF and log in. Session has already been started. Oh, I already have a session started. That's because I'm passing the session for the messages. That's fine. So we already have our session, but just to reiterate why I did that is because we were using the session variable to store values that we wanted to pass to the customer that's viewing the website. So let's try that again. Let's go to our login page. If the session message is here, so let's make sure we're setting that session message. If there is no result, select users for username inactive. And our database is called users. Okay, that's good. Okay. Well, it may be because it's not able to actually prepare the statement and bind the parameters because there's nothing there. So let's go ahead and add in a temporary user account here. Let's do insert. We're going to do tester. Fname is going to be test person. I'm just going to do a flat text password, which we will change, and then we're going to flag it as active. Alright, so now let's see. We did tester and password. So let's just try tester and see if that works. It does not. Alright, so oh, well, I guess that makes sense. We're not actually calling the function up here. Alright, so let's remove all employees. And we're going to, we have that button that we set below, so we're going to do if is set, then we're going to do the post, the btn login that we created earlier, and then we're going to pass the username, and it's going to equal the post username, and the password is going to equal the post password. And let's go ahead and end if, and then we're going to pass those to the function. So username, and then password. Okay, now if we try it again, it logs us in. Alright, so let's go back to the login page just so we can test out a bad login. So the account has not been enabled. Please contact your administrator. So we're passing this password, and whenever you go to use a password or set a password, you want to make sure that it's encrypted. So for right now, I'm just going to show you the way to not do it, and that would be to do something like this, where you need to have the you're passing the password as a text, as a string, rather than as a flagged value that's verified and encrypted. So let's just see what this looks like with the password being sent over as plain text. Equals question and active. So this is the way that we're going to do it to pass it as a text with no encryption on it, and it is a terrible way to do it. Don't ever do that in real life. So we're going to do tester and then password as the password, and it allows us to get in. So if we try to come in here and do, let's see, tester and 1, 2, 3, 4, it tells us that it's not enabled because it is hitting that text password right here, which is just another way that it's verifying, just like it is a username. There's no encryption at all. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this completely as to not forget it there. I just wanted to show you the way to not do it. But you may be wondering, how do you actually pass that password into this statement? You don't. What we're going to do is we're actually going to pass a hashed version of the password. And the way we're going to do that is, first I'm going to create the hashed version as if it was something that we already had in the database. So let me see, I want to add it. Trying to remember. Alright, there we go. I'm just looking at my notes here. Alright, so we're passing that password. We're going to be passing the password. So what I want to do right now is going to write out a statement that will hash the password for us. So we're passing it already, so we're going to do password equals password hash, and this is a function that is used commonly in newer versions of PHP. If you have an old version of PHP, this may not specifically work for you, but if you have an older version of PHP, you definitely need to upgrade because stuff like this exists. You don't want to have to, you know, SHA-1, SHA-2, SHA-256, SHA-512, or MD5. They're good if you hash it, rehash it, salt it, you know, do all that kind of stuff to it. It's still very insecure though. This password hash functionality has been proven effective to be better than what was currently out there prior to, I think, 5.6 for PHP. So if you're using an older version, upgrade so you can use something like this. If you're using a newer version and you're still using SHA-1 or SHA-256 or 512 or whatever it is, keep in mind that there is other options out here that you don't store passwords and then encrypt them. You create hashes that match those passwords. So this is what this function would do. So let's go ahead and continue, and we're going to pass our password to it, and then we're just going to set the flag as password default. There's other options that you can add to this if you wanted to customize it a little bit, but I'm just going to use password default for this tutorial. So I'm not actually going to pass it anywhere. What I want to do right now is just echo it out so you can see what that hash looks like. And then we're going to add that hash here instead of the password so we can actually create the account the way we want to. So let's do tester and then password. And let me go back because I need to prevent it from redirecting whenever it's successful. So let's take that off for now. Do tester password. So this is the hash that it's given us for this password, and there's a lot of variables go into creating this hash. So that's something that you need to keep in mind. You're not passing a password to your database. You're storing a hash that references elements of the dashboard that's got all kinds of encryption in it. So it's unique. You could have two people that are using the same password, but because they have different usernames, it's coming off as a different password. So it's a lot of different things that go into play in order to make this password be what it is. Okay, so now that we have our password encrypted, let me go ahead and get rid of this echo statement, and then I'm going to turn the redirect back on. And if we try to do it again, well, it's because we're not checking for it. So let's go ahead and check for it. So we have the password that's being hashed. Let's go ahead, and I want to take this, and I just want to take it out because we're not going to be using this, but I'm just going to come down here and comment it out because we are going to be using it later when we go to create a new user. But for right now, we're just going to be logging in the user, so we're going to do a password verify instead of a password hash, because we don't need to do the hash. We need to verify the hash that's in the database against what we are sending over to it. So while we're in this section right here, we want to, since we're pulling the password and all of the user information from the database, we're going to do a if statement here. So if password underscore verify, and then we're going to pass our password, and then we're going to pass a hash, very hard to say, pass a hash of the password that's coming from the database. So if it is, then it's going to redirect it, create the session, all this kind of stuff. If it doesn't match, then it's going to display another session message, which we're going to put right here. Close out our if statement, and we're going to change this to say your username or password is incorrect. Please try again. And the reason why I put username or password in there is because you don't want to tell potential hackers that they got the username right but the password is incorrect. So put something on there that says username or password, just to kind of make it a little bit more difficult for them to guess exactly where they're at in trying to hack your system. Okay, so we're gathering our hash as it's just returning whatever's in the database. So we're going to do row password is our hash. So now if we run this page again, we should be able to see that there's it'll let us in like that, or if we type in a bad password, so I'm going to do 1234 again, it says that it's incorrect because now it's actually looking at comparing that hash to what you're entering in here to see how accurate it is. Okay, so that's basically the login of it. What we want to also do is to make it where, like right now, if I'm not logged in, I can still go to the slash and display this page. What I want to do is create a function that is going to prevent any of these pages from being displayed unless I log in accurately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my header.php here, and then I don't really need this anymore. I'll keep it for now. We're going to modify this later to actually display your name. So let me come up here, and we're going to add another PHP tag. PHP if is set, no, if it's not set, and we're going to be looking for that session user. If it's not set, we're going to redirect them to the header again. I'm sorry, it's going to be header location redirect to the login screen because they're not logged in. We want them to log in. And then we're going to exit out any additional code that gets processed. Then we're going to close our end if and close our PHP statement. So right now, because I've already logged in, if If I go to refresh this, it's going to be fine. What I need to do is end that session. So in our header, we're going to add a logout next to this username right here. So on this side right here where we have our welcome message, we're going to add in just a link that goes to a logout page. So log out, and then we're just going to have it say log out, and then close that parentheses. And let me add a space in between the last name and that. So right now the logout page doesn't exist, so let's come over here and create a new file called logout.php. In this logout.php file, we are going to just do something very simple. PHP, we're going to include our functions file, because we're going to create a function that does a logout for us. So include functions.php, and then we're going to call this function that we're going to run do log out. Alright, so inside of our functions.php, we need to create a new function. Let me put a comment on this so we know where we're at. So this is going to be the login statement. And then let's go down here, and we're going to do log out statement. So we're going to call it function, or we're going to set the function, we're going to call it do log out. And then we're going to unset the session that we created for the user on a successful login. So that's just the entire thing. We're not going to worry about the individual items in it. We're just going to close out the entire thing when they go to log out. So everything's removed from the user session. So we're going to pass a success message and let them know that they have been successfully logged out. So they don't wonder why they just bounced to the first screen to log in if they accidentally might have clicked something. And then we're going to redirect them using the header location, and we're going to once again redirect them to login. And then we're going to exit out the code so that it doesn't process anything else. So now if we refresh this, we have our logout. We click on it, and it's going to bring us to our login screen where it says that we have been successfully logged out. Okay, now to test the theory that I had earlier about not being able to log in or see the pages when you're not logged in is that it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing. So in the header file, we check to see if the session is set, then we redirect it. Location needs to have a colon. Okay. Now refresh. Alright, so now any other page, so if we try to do the update ID 1, it's going to redirect us to this login screen. Alright, so that's exactly what we wanted to do, so let's go ahead and log back in. Tester passwords, everything's good. Click on update, everything's good, we can still see everything. So now I changed the success message. I don't know if y'all saw that, but I misspelled success, so that's why it did not show it in that green background. Alright, so now one other thing that I want to do is make it where whenever you log in that it adds you to the header up here. So instead of doing select single where it's currently grabbing whoever is the single employee, we want it to be select single user. So let's try tester password. So John Doe is who it's currently getting from here because that's how we coded it last time. So we are going to create a new function and we're going to call this, let's see, select single statement. And this is going to select a single user, so we're going to call it select single user. And then we're going to pass an ID, and we're just going to set it as null just in case it doesn't get passed for whatever reason. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy the select single that we've already done for the employees, and we are going to add this here and just change it from employees to users. So this is pretty much the exact same thing. And now inside of here, instead of doing select single, we're going to do select single user, and then we're going to pass that session variable that we did for the ID. And this will give us that ID. Okay, so everything looks good there. So if we refresh this, now it says welcome test person, which is who we are because we are first name test person, first name test, last name person. Okay, so now we want to create the ability to register a new account without being an administrator of the website. So let's come over here and log out. So that's the basic authentication, log in, log out. That's pretty much what you need to do. If you don't want to allow people to register accounts, you can do it pretty quickly like this, and you can just add new accounts to the database. But what we're going to add right now is that register.php page, which is going to allow them to create their own registration or register for their own accounts. So register.php, and inside of this, we are going to copy over, let's just say we're going to copy over our login screen. And inside of this, we're going to obviously not do a button login, we're going to do a button register. So we'll change that when we get down to the form. And whenever we're adding them to the database, we're going to add username, first name, last name, password. We don't want to have to worry about active and level. We're actually going to do that as part of the administration panel. So we're going to pass username, first name, last name, and password. So username, password. We need to also create a field for fname. And let's do this. Fname, and then one more for lname. Okay, so let's come over here, click on this, and we see this. So let's scroll down a little bit. We can keep the message here. Let's come over here and do register, and then we're going to change this to register. So we're going to have the username, the password, and then we're going to create two more fields. And just to clean it up the way that it looks a little bit, I'm going to throw these into the Bootstrap rows. And I'm going to do a column MD-6. Let me close this. It's wrapping too much now. Alright, so now I have my labels, I have my divs, and let me duplicate. Let me go ahead and just change this to fname, first name, fname, fname. And then I'm going to copy this entire section, and we're going to change this to lname, 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 and then last name. So now if we refresh our form, there's first name, last name, username, password. We no longer need to have this register link anymore, so let's go ahead and get rid of that. We can change this to register, and then set the btn login as btn register. Register. Okay. Alright, so we got it doing everything that we want it to do on the registration page. So now we just have to process what it actually does up here. So we need to create the function, and let's call it create user, and we're going to pass username, password, fname, and lname to that function. So let's go back to our functions, and we're going to now create a function called create user. So create user statement. And like I said previously, we're going to actually be able to create a user in the administration panel as well, and then you're going to be able to give them active and level specifics. So we're actually going to create this function to be a dual purpose function, and you'll see what I mean whenever I get there. But let's go ahead and create user, and we're going to pass the username equals null, the password equals null, fname equals null, lname equals null. Then we're going to pass active equals null, because on this part of it, it's not actually going to call that. Whereas on the part in the administration, it will call it, and it will be using a drop-down list box to do it. So we wouldn't necessarily have to put null on here, but because we're making it a dual-purpose function, we're going to go ahead and add it on there so that everything gets passed to where it needs to. Alright, so I'm going to come up here and I'm going to copy the insert statement that we previously did. And because a lot of the functionality of a CRUD system, it's all the same. You just have to have it go into different places. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to insert into users, and we're going to insert everything. Even if it's null, it's just going to come back as a null, which is a 0 in the database for us. Alright, so we're going to do fname, and I'm going to keep them in order so that based on what they are in the database, so we can reference it later. Then let's do username password. Active level. How come my level is weirding out on me? Okay, so we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're going to do 6 question marks. 4, 5, 6. It's got me a little worried, but I guess we'll see if it breaks or not when we go to do it. And we're also going to be doing, we're passing 1, 2, 3, 4 strings and 2 integers, which are going to be updated like so. So username, password, fname, lname, active, and level. And then we're going to execute it after we bind it the parameters to our statement. We're going to execute the statement, and then we're going to close it. So what we need to do right here is, since we're going to be adding it in the future so that our administrators can create a new user in the administration panel, we want to display a different message for them compared to someone who is going to be just creating an account that's not currently logged into the system. So we're going to do if is set, and then that session user, and if it is set, then we're going to display a success message that says that you've successfully added a new user. And then we're going to redirect them to, we're going to create a page called users. And then we're going to do else. Let me just copy over this because it's the same thing. And then we're going to do end if. And then it's going to be another success message. And we're going to say you have successfully created a new user. Once approved, you can log in here. And then we're going to redirect them to the login page. So whenever they create a new user, that's where this password hash functionality is going to come into play. So whenever we create a new user, we have to hash the password and then store it in the database. So let's go ahead and right after our right before our statement, we're going to just hash that password using the password underscore hash that we've seen earlier, how it works. Now for this, let's go ahead, and if the active is null, we're just going to set it as a 0. If it's not null, we're going to just pass it. So if active equals null, we're just going to do active equals 0. And we're going to do the same thing with the level. So if it equals null, level equals 0, then end if. Okay, so this will add a new user to the database with a hashed password. It will check to see if they're active, if they have a level, and if it's being done through the administration panel. So let's go ahead and test it out, and hopefully this whole thing right here not changing color like the rest of it. Let's see what it does. So let's say we want to register John Doe. Wait, before I do that, I keep forgetting to do this. Create user. Okay. Alright, so just making sure I actually called the function this time, because it seems like I always forget to do that. And then we're going to do jdoe, and password is going to be password once again. And hold on, let me refresh this because that's changed. So John Doe, jdoe, password. Register. You successfully created a new user. Once approved, you can log in here. So let's browse and see if it actually created it, which it did. So I guess maybe it's just the visual code itself is weirding out on me, but it worked. Alright, so let's go back to our functions. One thing that we want to check for is if you come over here to register, you could essentially register jdoe multiple times, which is very insecure. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a select statement that checks to see if a username is being used. If it is, then it's going to display a message that they can't use that username. If it's not, then it'll just pass through it. Okay, so I'm going to find the select statement that we use, and let's just take this one. Alright, so we're going to bind it, we're going to execute it, we're going to get the rows just like so. And then let's come back down here, and directly after our MySQL connection global statement, this is where we're going to add it into. So now let's come over here and select from users where username equals this. Currently we don't care if they're active because it's just going to be checking to see if that username exists. We don't want it to change if they're active or if they're not active. We just want it to come in here and say, okay, the username does exist, so we're going to move forward with it. Okay, so if the result has rows, we're going to push over a message statement. Else, we're going to run the code that we just created for this. And I need to come over here, then end if. Okay, so let's pass a message to them if it's already been created so that they will be aware that it's been created. And it's no longer a success message, it is a danger message. And we're going to change this to the username you chose is taken. Please try again. Alright, so let's look through this code real quick. So basically it looks to see if the username exists. If it does, it's going to, so if the results equal greater than 0, it's going to display this message. Otherwise, we want it to come in here and we're going to run it through a while statement. So while the, actually, do we need to? I don't think that we need to. So let's not do the while statement. Why am I doing all? Okay. Alright, so I'm just thinking out loud here. So we got our if else end if end if else end if. Alright, I'm just looking through the code to see why this is unexpected. Why is this? Oh, I don't know why I'm even. Yeah, I knew that. Alright, so let's just go ahead and exit after this because we want them to be able to see that message. We don't need to do it up here because they're never going to leave this page, but on here we want them to be able to see that message that they've successfully created a new user or they successfully added the user. So if we come back over here and we register Johnson Doe and with the same username of John Doe, even if we change the password, it should not go through. Don't you just love whenever that happens, whenever you're live recording? So it's not flagging it for some reason. Hold on a second. Let me look through the code real quick. So we're going to create the user. We're going to prepare the statement. We're going to bind the parameters. We're going to execute it. We're going to get the result. If the results, oh, okay. So right now I'm saying if the results don't equal, if they do equal to one that's being there, to display the message. Or if they don't equal to one that's there, display the message. If they do, then let it go through. So right now I'm going to say if it doesn't equal to 0, which would mean that it passed one that it found, that's whenever it would display this message. So let's try this again. So let's go back to our register page. We're going to do Johnson Doe with the username of jdoe and a password. Register. The username you chose is taken. Please try again. So that's the way that it should have worked. Okay, so now that we have, we've created our login and our register page, I want to throw in some JavaScript on there the same way that we did the initial form.validate because I don't know if you noticed because I kind of rushed through it, but you have the register class and you have over here you have the login class. So in our JavaScript we're essentially going to copy what we did for the let me get to it. We're going to copy what we did for the form and we're going to make it where now it's going to check for a login and a register form. So first let's do login and we're going to change this. We don't need this for the login page. We just need to make sure that they're logging in. So the username and the password is required. And then let's go ahead and get rid of this because this is no longer needed because there's no phone number. And then we're going to do username, a username is required, and then password, a password is required. The rest of it we don't really have to change. So I'm going to go ahead and hopefully we should be able to go to our login screen. Let's just in case do a hard refresh and let's try to log in. Alright, so a username is required and let me put this together because that's how I have the label. So a username is required and a password is required. So if we do tester, no password, everything looks good. Alright, so now we're going to do the same thing to our register form. So let's take this now and the register part. So the register here is going to actually be used for the administration panel as well as the non-logged in user section. So let's do register. We're going to validate the username, the password, but we're also going to validate the F name and the L name. Alright, so F name, L name, whenever they're creating a new password, we want to give them a minimum requirement. So kind of like we did with the other one with the min length. And I'm going to set this one to 12 just because it'll make it a little bit more secure for their password so you don't get like a, a dad or a high password. You get something that's actually kind of that they have to think about. There's other ways that you can do password validation through this jQuery form validation. I'm not going to get into that part right now because it's you have to import another script to be able to do it, or you have to create your own functionality to be able to do it in here. So I'm just going to set the minimum length right now, and if you wanted to do more than that, you're more than welcome to. For this tutorial, it's not that important. Okay, so we're going to do F name, L name, and let's see, first name, last name is required, username is required, a password is required, and we're also going to do the min length that we did on the other one. So this is what we actually have to put in there for the message for the password. We're going to change this to password. A password is required because you don't want someone registering for an account if they don't have a password. So let's come back over here, do a hard refresh, and now we register. So now we type in this. At least 12 characters are required. So that's exactly what we wanted to do. Let me go ahead and on the register.php page, I'm going to come over here and put a link that goes back to the login page in case they accidentally click that. So we're going to go to login and let's just say cancel. Okay, so let's go back to our login page and we're going to log in now. Alright, so now that we have that, we want to create the administration part to be able to update those users. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of this header file because we don't really need it right now, and the login file. We can keep our initialize.js open because we are going to use it later to do a variation of this data table. But for right now, let me create a new file called users.php. So in our users.php, I'm going to copy over what we did on the index.php because we are going to be using a data table on this page. Alright, and then we're going to have to create a, we're going to use the function the same way that we did with our data table on the home page. We're going to use it for this users page. So let me save this so we can go to users. Wow, okay, users. Alright, so we want to change this up a little bit. Let's say instead of doing FA check circle, let's say users, and we're going to name it users. So what I want to do that's a little bit different here is that we're going to have a place for you to see the current users as well as add a new user. So I don't want to create a new page for the add new user. I want to show you how to do it with the Bootstrap tabbed interface. So if you do Bootstrap tabs, they have their navs, and you scroll down to the very, very bottom of this. They show you how to do it. We're going to do it like this. So they already have the functionality in here. Another benefit about using Bootstrap. So let's go ahead and copy this over, and we're just going to put it right below it. So let me minimize this again so I can see what I'm doing. And we don't want to. You don't have to have it in the nav. They have it in the nav, but we don't want to have it in the nav. We have a nav for our header, so we're just going to take it out right there. Alright, so we got our div, nav tabs. Let me go ahead and get rid of some of this stuff. So this area selected and controls, they're for ADA compliance and things like that. They help with some scripting. So for this purpose, I'm just going to remove them all together. So we don't need to have that in there at all. And we need to change this to go from nav home. We're going to make it say something like users. Let's go ahead and get rid of this role as well because we really don't need it either. And then we're going to change this to, I guess, users. I guess we can probably go through the whole thing doing it this way. So let's see, users, and down. So this is the top part of it. So I'll show you what it looks like real quick. So that is the top part I'm editing right here. You see the 3 dots? They're actually being controlled through this section here. So we only need 2 of them. So let's go ahead and get rid of that one. Let's go ahead and get rid of this second link, and then we're going to do add new For this one, we can also get rid of all of this information, and let's do nav. No, not nav. We're going to take away the nav, and we're going to put add. And then let's do the add tab, users add. Alright, so that looks good. We got rid of this. We don't need to have these again. I'm just trying to simplify the code a little bit. It is recommended y'all have those in there, but for right now, you don't need to have them in there. So let's say we name that one users, and then we name this one add. Alright, so let me get rid of the 3 dots, and we're going to place this inside of this. Let's make it a little cleaner so I can see what I'm doing. And then we'll leave this one blank for now, but we're going to update that one shortly as well. Alright, so now if we come back over here, we got our users, add new. Not the prettiest thing right now, so let's go into our style sheet inside of our CSS folder. Let's scroll all the way down to the bottom, and I already know the name of this, but if you don't, it's just a way that you can find is just going through your Google Chrome developer tools. It's called tab pane, and what I'm going to do in this is I'm going to add a border that's 1 pixel solid. I do this a lot, so 1 pixel solid, and then I know that the highlighted items at the top for the nav is using DEE2E6 as the color for the border, and then we're going to remove the border from the top because there's already a border on top of it, and it kind of gives it that tabbed interface look, and then we're going to give it a padding of 2 rem so that it actually looks a little bit cleaner. So let's do a refresh there. So now it actually looks like more of a tabbed interface. So on the Bootstrap website, they don't really have it wrapped in anything, so that's why it looked like that. So that's if you ever do it this way, then that's something you're going to have to do often. Alright, so we don't need this anymore, so let's go ahead and close out of our style sheet. Let's start working with this table now. So inside of this table, we don't need the t-body, just like we removed it last time. We're going to call this, instead of data table, we're going to call this users. So that way that we can control the route that it's going to be calling a lot better than it was. So we also want to display the ID if they're active or inactive, which is going to be coming over as a 0 or a 1 right now. We also want to display their username, first name, and last name. And there is no phone, so we can get rid of this. Okay, so now refresh it, and nothing is there. Okay, so this is the data table that we want to copy. But one of the things I want to do first is this route.php. We're going to create another route inside of it that is going to do get users. And then we're also going to change this to select all users, which I believe we've created a function for. If not, then I can create one. So that's select single user. So we need to create the select all users functionality for that. Sorry. Okay. All right. Lost my train of thought for a second there. I'm trying to look over my notes to make sure. There we go. All right. So select single user. We're going to come over here and we're going to do select all users. Then we're going to create the function called select all users. We're not going to pass anything to it, and we can scroll up here to our select all for the employees, and we can reuse that functionality here. Instead of select all from employees, we're going to select all from users. We can leave that danger message the same. We're going to be parsing it the exact same way because we're going to be calling it the same way. So we got select all users here. So now we need to, inside of our JavaScript, we need to create another data table that looks very similar to this one, but it's going to be calling a different route. So it's going to be calling get users. And we also called it the data table itself. We called it users instead of data table. We're going to be passing over the ID, the F name, the L name, and then we're also going to be passing over whether or not they're active, and then their username. And we also still want to have the ability to update and delete users from here. So instead of doing update, we're going to do update user and delete. Where's it at? Here it is. Delete user. Okay, so we need to create those files in a second, but I just want to make sure that the data is pulling across. We also, it's going to be the 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th column that we don't want to order. Alright, so that should give us, okay, it is kind of sort of working. It is not parsing over the data. Close this and got our route. So it's get users, data encode is select all users, and inside of here it's get users, show ID active, yeah, phone was still included. So if you have any of your variables messed up, it's not going to show it to you. It's still showing something there. Let me check on the users page. So ID active, username, first name, last name. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I might have put a 6 in there. I did. 5. That's because I counted the phone. Alright, that makes a lot of sense. There we go. That's better. Alright, so now I think that's enough for us to display what we want. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to create the form for this add new, which is essentially the exact same form that we have for the register. We're just going to add a few new items onto it. So let's go right here and we're going to change that. So now refresh, add new, first name, last name, username, password, and then we're also going to give the administrator the ability to do a selectable list for the level and if they're active. So let's do level, change that, then we're going to do active, okay, so now we should have 2 more form fields. So level, last name. Alright, so what we want to do here is we don't want to give them the ability to type. We want to give them a select box. So we can change this to a select box. Get rid of the type. It's still going to be named level. It's still going to have the form class control or form control. We're going to close it out there. And then we're going to put in option value equals 0. And we're going to make this one be selected. And we're going to name this one's a level, so it's going to be 0, and it's going to be a read only. Alright, so let's copy this over. And we're going to change this to a 1 and make anybody who is a 1 an admin. That's not something that you necessarily have to do, but I think it'll, hold on, my code was acting a little wonky. Okay, so it's not something that you have to do. You can create more levels, but for this purpose I think that'll be sufficient. Alright, so this one is going to be active and active. Alright, so we can get rid of the input here. Why? Ooh, my fingers are slipping, I guess. Okay, so active class equals form control, and then we're going to do 0 equals inactive, 1 equals active. Alright, so going back over there, we got 1. Oh, gotta remove this. We don't want that admin to be selected every time. Alright, there we go. So now we should have our read-only and admin, inactive, and active. And I've been recording for over an hour. I gotta figure out a way to make these videos shorter. Okay, so I might have to end the video soon and start up a new one, but I think I'm going to at least finish out this part of it. Alright, so let's just do one final check through the form. Okay, so we got to add the form tag at the bottom. And then we need to come up here and we need to edit the button call in order to have the active field and the level field. So let's change that to active and level. Add active and level here, and then we also need to change this to btn create user, because that's what we called it down here in the form, I believe. So btn create user. Okay, let's just refresh this, and we're going to create Jane Doe. She's going to be inactive for now. Jane Doe, and then password 1234, since we are requiring 12 characters now. So if we hit create new user, it says now successfully added a new user, and you can see Jane Doe down here. Alright, so I think this is a good stopping point for this portion of the video. It's been a little bit over an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the video here, and I'll pick it up on another day for another video to come out. So if you liked what you saw so far, definitely stay tuned so we can finish it. What you've seen so far for the past 4 videos now, it will give you a good idea of how to get a CRUD system up and working. But stay tuned. We got a little more tweaks. We're going to create the link up here. We're going to make it where you can't create new or add anything unless you are an administrator. So for the time being, like and subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell. We try to do a premiere every Friday. So thanks for now, and we'll talk to you later.